Hello, everybody. It's Holly from Besotted Orchids. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have a new setup. We're in a new area, which you normally see my orchids about a mere 10 feet away from here. I'm fighting an issue with the lighting. We are having extreme issues with, I can't compete with the outdoor lighting. That's a really large window right beside where I normally film. I can't compete with that, no matter what I do in this house. I think part of the problem is I have extremely tall ceilings up there. This is 120. If you haven't followed my channel, I raise my orchids in my home. I don't do anything special really with them. I'm trying to help people understand you can grow. If I can grow them in this 120-year-old farmhouse in Ohio, you can probably grow them in your home, which is probably going to have a better environment than my home does. Let's get real. I have a 120-year-old farmhouse. Honestly, that somebody's interested in buying, and I'm pretty sure I know who it is, and I'm really, really upset by that. I'm just going to go on that little rant for a second. Somebody has approached a realtor, an underhanded person who lives very close to me has probably approached a realtor, and I will be getting to the bottom of that. Not coming to me personally, asking about my home, but going through somebody, so I don't know who they are. That's really classy. But anyhow, back to the orchids in their environment. My home is not for sale, by the way. I have very, very tall ceilings in here. Old farmhouse. Not a lot of rooms, but the rooms are very large and very high ceilings. It's very, very hard to light something like that. You're just fighting so much room. I'd have to have massive lights everywhere, and we're not massive light people. So anyhow, I have decided I'm going to try to move them more over here. They're going to come in. They're just going to visit with us over here. We're going to have our little orchid chat. And they're going to pop in and out. If you guys don't like the setup, let me know. If you do like it, please let me know also. You can see in the background, that is my tea set that my grandpa won at an overnight trot in Indiana. I think 1968 or 1972. Within 2 years of my birth, one way or the other. I think 1972 he won this. And he had an overnight trot with his horses, and he won that sterling silver tea set. It's been freshly polished about a week ago, so it's looking good. It normally doesn't look like that. It gets polished like 2 times a year because it's a lot of work. But I love having that tea set. My dad gave that to me. So anyhow, back to the setup. You're probably going to be seeing that a lot. This just seems to work okay. If I would go to the other side of the room, which my husband suggested, in front of the books, well, you have another orchid person who does that. Matthew, love your channel to death. I'm not going to copy. I feel like that's kind of copying. I know he's in a rental home now, and that's where it works great for him to film. But he's got bookshelves behind him. I feel like, every channel should be a little bit unique. You shouldn't be copying. Unintentionally copying other people even. I think we need to be aware of that. So, there is some overlapping in the orchid world because, come on, we're all growing orchids. Things are going to overlap. But something intentional like that I can avoid, I think I want to avoid it. So either I go with this setup or I put a black cloth summer on the wall, on another empty wall, because the walls are so light, and I fade away in them. And I film over there. But this is a really great place. I can set orchids on my table. I can set orchids on my hutch behind me. Thoughts? Give me your thoughts on this. I think it works okay. So we'll be visited throughout. It's a little bit of work getting them all over here, which just was redundant because you can't even, it's a little low. But we'll have to finesse things a little bit. But that's kind of what I'm going towards, because I'm not going to put out crap videos. Let's face it. That video, the last video I put out with my orchids, Valentine's video, started out so great. And then I noticed when I watched it later, because I went through so much of it and appeared to be, excuse me, my phone's giving me an update. It appeared to be fine. And then I watched it. I'm like, no, that's not fine. That's not fine. It got dark. And that's the lighting outside. So I do grow in a 120-year-old farmhouse. They live here. no air conditioning. Of course, we do have heating. We do have a gas-fired furnace in the basement. We do heat our home. We're in Ohio. We have to heat. But they basically live in my windows. I will do another grow space tour. That one got deleted. Shaky hands that day. I'm trying to clean up the channel. I don't want to have videos that look horrible. I don't want that. You know, I would like this channel to grow. I would like subscribers to people to subscribe and feel comfortable coming to the channel and not say, that's horrible. That's absolutely appalling. That woman should just stop doing videos. Maybe she should throw all her orchids away too. So I don't want that to happen. So I'm trying to make a few changes this year just to help things out. Like I'm filming right now currently on my phone, and you know, I have a really, really nice camera. Why am I not filming with that? So that's something I may be doing in the future, switching to a different way. So I'm not getting notifications about my storage being full, or people aren't calling in on what I am trying to film on. So, okay, I am a homeschool mom. For people who don't know, I'm here throughout the day. This is something I do to, something from me. I do orchid talks at local libraries and local venues. Not orchid related, but I do have pollinator classes coming up at local libraries. I teach sourdough classes. I kind of become a speaker. Unintentionally, I've become a speaker. Thank you, Kelly Dotson. You've created a speaker. So my husband said only I could find a way to make a little bit of cash talking. So anyhow, welcome to my channel. All you newbies out there, I appreciate you. And thank you for sticking around through all the muddling of getting my channel finessed how I would kind of like it to look. I see other channels and I'm like, oh gosh, look at that lighting. Fabulous, fabulous. I don't have a full room in my home I can dedicate to just strolling in, sitting down, and I have gorgeous lighting around me. We all know who I'm talking about. She's got drop dead gorgeous lighting. All of her orchids are fabulous. She can do that. I can't do that here in my home. Some people have suggested I even just take them down to the basement and film, which I do have beautiful stone walls down there. It's an old home. But I'm not carting my orchids down to the basement. I'm certainly not going to grow them down there. So this is what it is. If you want to see my orchids growing here in my home and in my environment and listen to my prattling, this is what we're going to have. Something very close to this. It's never going to be blitzy and glamorous. It's just going to be, me and my orchids. So once again, welcome. Now, the reason I am coming to you today, excuse me 1 minute. I was actually out in my meadow earlier filming the frost. Beautiful, beautiful frosty morning. Lots of snow. Absolutely fabulous out there. So I did put up a quick video of, unfortunately, Lily. Fortunately or unfortunately, whoever is a dog lover or not, Lily was heavily involved in the video. But I did have a lovely viewer, Lisa Allen. She was asking a question in the comments regarding dendrobium nobilis. That's really why I wanted to do the video today. So I feel like I'm really short here. I'm not sitting in my normal chair because I didn't want the back part of the chair showing. So I'm going to show you what I have, Lisa, for my nobilis. This one used to be so much larger. This one was sitting on my deck because I thought, why not put it out on the deck in the summer? I think it maybe had a mealy bug or something. I was concerned and I didn't want it in with all the other babies. So I moved it outside. This did have a few more canes. As you can see, I did a little trimming last week. If I had known, I would have waited and done the trimming today for the video. But I want you to notice this. She was asking about winter rest for the nobilis. Now, the nobilis, they do like a winter rest. They do like brighter conditions. They do like a drier rest. The problem with that, with this one in particular, was it took a hit last year. Not only did it stay on the deck, it fell. When it came back in the house, it fell, which is why it's now in a heavy clay pot. I'm moving most of my orchids into heavy clay pots. I don't know. Am I clumsy? I don't know what's going on. Big blousy sleeves. Something's catching on my pots. If they're in a plastic pot, they're going to fall down. I had a friend come in the other day and she was horrified. The poor dear, not her fault at all. She wasn't in the house 2 minutes till she knocked an orchid down. That's my fault. That's not her fault. I'm just going to remove this for the video. It was in a plastic pot, and it did fall right over as soon as she touched it. That orchid is on my next. In fact, I might do a video on it. It's an encyclia. Was that an encyclia? I have 2 troublemakers. I have an encyclia, and I also have a some sort of a brassavola type. So one of those hit the floor, and she was mortified, but she should not have been. She should have said, Holly, get your crap together. So, yeah. Clay pots for me, all the way. They let things dry out. I'm not overwatering. I am watering more often, though, because they are drying out. But back to the nobile. You see how beautiful and green and shiny. I haven't put anything on this. This is brand new growth. It's not done growing. It doesn't have the final. That was a bad place. I hope my phone didn't. From what I'm looking at now, my phone did a little blurb right there when my mouth was hanging open talking to the middle of a word. Beautiful. Okay, but right here, beautiful new growth. We don't have the apex one. We don't have the final one that just shoots out at the end. This is still in growth mode. I'm not going to stop watering this. I'm not going to stop feeding this. This is growing, and if I want blooms next year, I have to let these canes grow. We don't want to stop them. We don't want to stagnate them right here where they are. We don't want that to happen. So she had a question about dry winter rest, if it was still growing. If it is still growing, Lisa, that's a wonderful question. Please keep feeding it. If you're growing and your children are growing, or your dogs or your cats, whatever you have in your life, if they're growing, they're going to need nutrients. Don't stop giving this plant nutrients. I'm not going to stop. I know it says dry winter rest. That's if you want blooms. Now, and this one fell. This one did have a hit. It did fall when it was in the home. So it never really finished its complete growth. I'm really upset about this. But this one, it might. You're not going to cut this off. It might go ahead and give me some buds, maybe this year yet, or maybe it's going to be next year. So basically, everywhere you have a leaf, opposite that, you have a little nodule spot where a bloom can come out. So that's where you're going to form your buds or your keikis. If you're watering heavily throughout the winter, you could possibly develop keikis, which I'm going to show you. Mine did last year. So keikis are fine. I don't do a lot of noblies because I don't like to mess with all this. I really don't like to mess with all this kind of thing. But Love Memory Fizz, just a beautiful scent. Really pretty white orchid with a little purpley pink center. It smells like raspberries. Noblies are beautiful. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on a yellow one. I'm in a yellow kick lately. Maybe I just want to see the sun more often. But if you have beautiful new growth like this, just keep feeding it, Lisa. Don't worry about that at all. Just keep giving it what it needs. It needs that growth. It needs the nutrients. So this one here is in, it's being rebooted. Let's talk in computer. It's being rebooted. It needs time. It really needs time just to focus on whatever is going on with it. It has to become a beautiful plant again after all the damage I caused it by being out on the deck and then dropping it. So I hope you're taking better care of your orchids. I'm pretty sure you are. I don't know. Sometimes I just try something a little different, like the deck thing, and it didn't work out. It didn't work out for me at all because I wouldn't water it enough. I'd forget about it. And that was during the summer. They want a lot of water during the summer. I was kind of doing it backwards. So this one is in rehab. This one is trying to grow beautiful, beautiful new growth. So next year we'll have beautiful blooms. Now, there is some controversy as to whether the nobiles the new hybrids need a dry winter rest. They need something. I know we've hybridized them to make them easier on us. And let's face it, these orchids are easy. I'm growing them here in my home. Look at this. They're easy. I'm not doing anything extravagant with these orchids. I'm not setting up fancy grow lights. I'm not, singing them lullabies at night. I'm not doing anything fancy with these orchids. They're just surviving. And I think they're doing pretty good. This one here, I'm just really, I'm going to bring this one out. I'm really pleased with this. I just had to show Lady Ramona again because she won't last too much longer. But here are my keikis. If you are watering too much at a time when it wants winter rest, you could grow some keikis. Shaky hands. I have 3 that I did put in this same pot because they were rather tiny. I think I did a video on this one where I was repotting them. Here's a little larger one. I put 2 in here because they were a little larger. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that. If you have the same keiki off the same plant, there's no reason why you can't put it in the same pot. And just move yourself ahead towards a specimen-sized plant a little bit sooner. I mean, these are fine. These are going to be absolutely fine. They are growing in bark when they are going to be watered today. Today, after I homeschool, there will be a watering day. But keikis will grow on the side of your plant at the same growth point that your buds would. So here's a little bit of a problem. If you've created something out of a growth point, it's done. That growth point's done. So you're just going to have to wait for new growth and new canes to fill those, where you want blooms in the future. These turned into keikis. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with this. I can gift this to somebody. I can keep it. I can give it at one of my orchid talks, which I do have coming up in April. I do have an orchid talk. So anyhow, April is busy. Orchid talks, pollinator talks. I think I have 8 total different talks. So people pay me to do this. Imagine that. I think it's because I'm a rambler. People like to hear rambling. Some people don't. If you don't, I'm sorry. But anyhow, where a growth point has already been removed, it's done. It's not going to bloom again. It's not going to create a keiki. So if you have a very old cane, which is why I cut these off, there were old canes. They were highly desiccated. It was changing the plant over, so it wasn't even, it was a little more top heavy on one side than the other. And I didn't like that. It just threw off the balance of the plant. So I did remove those canes. If they're highly desiccated, if you've seen it, a bloom or a keiki has come out on each of those points, it's done. If you have beautiful new growth coming on your plant and it's healthy, go ahead and remove the old ones. They're not serving any purpose at that point. I know some people will hang on to them till I'll freeze this over. No, you can go ahead and cut those off. You don't need them. You don't need them. So, yeah, this is a little bit of, if it's not enough information, shoot me another question, Lisa. But really, if you're in an environment I do want to cover where you can't have a cold winter rest, say you're in a very warm location, then give it a dry rest. Give it something that's going to shock its whole system and says, whoa, I'm going to need to put some blooms out. It's really what it does. It kind of shocks it and says, I want to live. I'm going to throw some blooms out, or I'm going to throw out some keikis. Something has to happen. So if you don't have a cold environment, I could get as cold as I wanted them to be here. I'm in Ohio, for goodness sakes. They could get really cold here. But the word of thought is from, don't they say, Halloween to Valentine's Day, any of your winter resters. If you're in the northern hemisphere, you won't water. Or if you do, it's just a minimal water. So if you can't cool down, you can always stop watering. You can really reduce the water level that your plant is receiving. So that is a thought. You could either do, and a lot of people say brighter. If these are growing in the montane cloud forest where the trees are losing their foliage in the winter, it's much brighter. It's very bright. You can move it into a brighter location. There are just things you could do. I don't mess around with a lot of that. Just because I have a lot of orchids. I'm a busy person. I have ADHD. I'm not going to coddle each individual orchid. I just can't do it. Now, if I had 10 or 20 nobiles, sure. It's going to be an easy no-brainer. I'm going to remember very, very easily, hey, there's a whole group of orchids over here that need you to stop watering. Leave them alone. So maybe I should put a little ribbon on them that's red or something that says, don't you water these. You leave these alone. So next year when I have a lot more growth and I feel they're ready to bloom, I will probably drop down the watering. I'll probably do that next winter. It's a little late for this year because I do want the growth to continue. But, it's the name of the game, growth. Growth is the name of the game for orchids. If we want beautiful blooms, you might have to sacrifice a year of mediocre blooms to go ahead and get better blooms. Now, if you have a lot of orchids, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. I have orchids blooming all the time. Took me 160 orchids to get there, though. You can't have 10 orchids and expect to always have orchids in bloom. It's just not going to happen. So that's when you fill in with things like African violets and colochis, things like that you fill in with so that you don't have a lapse in blooms in your home. But other than that, I felt I really had to bump up the level so I have enough orchids. I do like to run the channel. I do like to have orchid talks. When I have an orchid talk, I do like to take blooms. No one wants to show up for an orchid talk and there's no blooms. They want to see those. So I did have to have that level of blooms. People think I'm a little carried away. You have too many orchids. What are you doing? No, I'm not. There's a method to the madness. I need this many in my home so I can do what I do with the orchids. Like I said, no one wants to go to an orchid talk and there's no blooms. It's kind of pointless. Here, look at my green leaves. I'm going to tell you about them. There's no ooh, there's no ah, there's no wow factor. So people really, really do like that. So I have a fairly large collection for in a home. It's by no means massive. There are people who have 400 or 500 orchids. That'd be amazing. That would be amazing. It might be more than I could care for. You'd almost have to step it up to a greenhouse at that point so you could really just water. Each one of these goes in and out of a pot to be soaked. And if they have to soak, they just stay in a little bit longer. That's really how I water my orchids. Each and every single one at a time. Sometimes if they're small, you'll put 4 or 5 down in the pot at a time. But as far as that goes, you're actually touching your orchid every day or, once a week at least when you're watering. You're looking at the leaves. You're seeing new blooms, new spikes coming along. You have a little more time to catch things, maybe a mealybug here or there. You're catching things you wouldn't catch if you were just going around a greenhouse spraying. In that condition, you might have to use chemicals. I don't use chemicals in the home. I try not to do that. So that's basically what's going on in my orchid world. So that's a really great question, Lisa. I hope I answered it. I'm going to see what I can end on here. I'm going to do a video also. You'll see me in the same setup, the same shirt. I'm going to do a video of some of the items that I do use to grow orchids as far as the care of them, Epsom salt, things like that. But here we go. I want to end with this. Look at this beautiful little twinkle. I don't know if you saw a former video. Hold still. Where I did go to Kingwood Gardens and I did pick up this beautiful little twinkle called Yellowbird. That has been on my list. I've been wanting a yellow twinkle. But then I got to thinking about it. I'm like, a yellow twinkle? Did you really need that? You have the chrysomorphum back here. That's tiny little yellow blooms. And you have the daddy of this, the mama or daddy, however you want to say it, one of the parents. You have the cheirophorum. That is tiny little yellow blooms. Did I need this one? Maybe not. But this is going to become a larger plant quicker than the cheirophorum, chrysomorphum and cheirophorum. Wrap your tongue around that one. So, yeah. Another thing, I think learning all these orchid names kind of keeps your brain a little sharp, a little more sharp. It's a little more like doing your crosswords every day. You have to really think about these words. And there are moments I draw a blank. There's a lot of orchids sitting in there. I'm going to draw a blank. So I wish you all a great day. I hope everything's going well in your life. I hope you have time to spend with your orchids. I hope things are blooming well for you. I hope mealybugs are avoiding your home like the plague. They're terrified to come near your orchids. I hope that's what's happening for you. Every now and then I find a few. Not a fan of it, but somehow they got in the house. Have to deal with it. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Please like, share, comment, and above all, enjoy those orchids.